In this version of the failure known as Reconstruction, we'll be discussing the amendments. In 1865, after the Civil War had ended, Abraham Lincoln expressed his view for the nation in the Gettysburg Address by saying, "It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth." In Lincoln's mind, he was hoping to have a big banner hanging from the top of the White House that said, "Welcome back, formerly enslaved and formerly rebellious." Sadly, Lincoln did not see his plan come to fruition as he was assassinated at Ford's Theater on April 14, 1865. His vice president, Andrew Johnson, or the anti-Lincoln as I like to call him, took office and became the leader of the not technically free world. His sentiment regarding rebuilding the nation was as follows: "This is a country for white men, and by God, as long as I am president, it shall be a government for white men." Johnson's impact on the nation during Reconstruction was pretty significant. Rebel states were admitted back into the Union after ratifying the 13th Amendment, which was the abolition of slavery, and the 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship to all born or naturalized in the U.S., including the newly freed. At the same time, these rebel states, with the approval from Johnson, were electing former Confederate leaders into Congress. As a group, in response to the 13th and 14th Amendments, they passed a set of laws called Black Codes. These laws were made to continue the social control that whites had over African Americans, and they were mostly focused on labor and land. A significant product of these Black Codes was the idea of sharecropping. Owners of land would provide these newly freed with tools, housing, and seed. In return, the workers would get a share of the crop, usually 1/3 to 1/2, with the price being set by the owner. This process made it difficult for the newly freed to start their own lives. The 15th Amendment prohibited any state to deny citizens the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Local governments found loopholes by way of the Jim Crow laws. The literacy tax forced voters to pass a literacy test before they could vote. Many times, these tests were given in Latin. From history, we know that it was illegal for slaves to learn how to read or write, so these tests were virtually impossible. There was also a required poll tax to voters on the day of voting, which was yet another hurdle for African Americans to jump. Many states also enforced the grandfather clause. This clause allowed only those whose fathers or grandfathers voted before 1867 to skip the literacy test and poll tax. No African Americans voted in any election before this time. With the help of Andrew Johnson, by the end of Reconstruction, the United States was left with a government that looked pretty similar to its pre-Civil War government.